Hey YouTube, how are we doing? Today I'm back with another video. Now I will be honest with you, I have started modifying my Triumph bobber already. I know I've only had it a few weeks, but when I was researching for buying and before I purchased the Triumph bobber, I was on a lot of forums and stuff like that, and particularly on Facebook on the bobber groups, and when people were asked about modifications, a lot of people were saying that the #1 modification they've done on their bike is to fit a CoC Customs Springer seat modification. Now, for anyone who's not aware what this is, basically you've got a monoshock on the Triumph bobber here, but the seat is basically sort of suspended on a cantilever type design, but there's no movement on the seat. The only movement is in the rear shock. Now, someone, I think the guy's name is Michael in Australia, has come up with this contraption, basically, which adds a spring to the seat as well, which makes it literally glide over bumps in the road like nobody's business. So I figured I'd give it a shot and see what it's like. I haven't been sent this, I have paid for this with my own money. In fact, they don't even know I'm doing the video, but I am going to fit this section now. There is some pretty decent pictorial instructions, but I'm going to show you on video how it's done. Let's get fitted. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to remove the seat off of the bobber here because the kit from CoC Customs comes with this new sort of slider plate, which is replacing this one that's already under the seat. The seat fixes onto this and this bar fixes into the frame of the bike like so. But this one has got a cutout on the inside basically for a spring to be fitted. So that's what we're going to do. So let's get this seat off. We need to lift the tank on this model because I've got a newer bobber with the 12-litre tank. One of the bolts is underneath the tank, so I just need to lift the tank quickly so I can access that bolt, and then undo these two bolts on the side that connect the seat to the frame, and we will whip that seat off in no time. I know how you do this because I did the video on moving the seat adjustment on the bobber just yesterday or a couple of days ago. So I'm going to whip this off quick and get to it. Okay, to lift the tank up, we've got two little bolts, one on either side of the frame. They're 12mm sockets, one just here and one just around the other side. So I'm going to be careful not to scratch the paintwork and whip those off quickly. Okay, pop those somewhere safe. Okay, now that we've loosened off this tank, you'll notice that it just lifts up like that to expose this little cap under here. Be careful not to lose that. And you've got a little bolt in here. Now, the instructions from CoC Customs do mention that this is a Torx 50-bit. It's not, it's actually a Torx 40. Maybe it was different on the older bikes, but on mine it's certainly a Torx 40. And I know that other people have found it to be a Torx 40 as well. So I'm going to go ahead and whip this out. Be careful not to lose the washer on this one when you take it out. Okay, we won't be needing this again, but we'll keep it safe for if we ever take this off. Right, next up we need to remove these bolts. There's one just here and one on the other side. These basically hold the seat clamp that the rail that the seat slides into, basically holds that onto the frame. So I'm going to do those just now and keep those safe somewhere. These are a Torx T50 piece that you'll need for these. And they're quite tight because they're tightened up to 48 Newton meters. Okay, now they're undone, we can go ahead and just lift the seat off. Job's a good one. Okay, now we've removed the seat, you'll notice that you've got like a little billet collet just on this right hand side. We need to remove this because we need to put a layer of grease all around this outer circumference just here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm just using an automotive multi-purpose grease to do this. Should have put some gloves on really, but I can always wash my hands, so that's all right. Get a nice coating on there. The reason being, previously, the seat was not designed to pivot on these bolts, And when we've got the spring fitted, it will need to be able to pivot on the bolt. So the grease will help things to be nice and smooth. Right, I reckon that's good enough. Let's chuck it back in. Give that a little tidy up, I think. Okay, as you can see, I haven't really cleaned it after. I've just added some more grease just to make it extra effective. Now, on the instructions, it does mention that they supply a bolt which basically fits in this little hole where I took the screw out of, and a locking nut is supplied in the kit. And they say to put this back in just for aesthetic purposes. But because I've got this model here that's got this plastic bung, we don't need to put that on there. We're just going to put this back underneath the tank so there's no unsightly hole. But do be sure to keep hold of the bolt which you took out, because you'll need it if you ever take this kit off. In she pops. So now I've relocated to a nice flat surface, and I'm protecting the seat with a t-shirt underneath so it doesn't get scratched up by the surface. Got quite a scratchy surface on the top of my table just here. We need to undo these these two nuts here, and basically remove the seat completely off of this Triumph original equipment rail. 17mm socket for this, and again they might be quite tight because these are done up to 38 Newton meters. So let's get these undone. Okay, we got a set of two nuts and washers here. We're going to need that when we put the seat back on the new slider. So let's get rid of this and grab the new one. I would just like to point out that this is the original equipment slider and this is the CoC custom slider. And I have to say, this looks like it's been cast, but this has been machined and it is absolutely fantastic quality. Better than this. But I suppose this has been made to a cost, and this has been made to be a great quality, nice looking product. So let's get this on the seat and see how it looks with it when it's on there. Now, when you order this kit from the website, you are asked whether you normally have your seat in the forward position, i.e. its highest position, or back on the slider in its lowest position. I like to have mine close up so I've got a more upright riding position, which is also the highest seat position. So I specified that the seat will be at the front. And you can see in here, I don't know if you can see, but you've got like a little indentation in there, which is where you basically your furthest forward on the seat washer and nut will locate because it's at the front. So I'm going to bang that on there now. So I know that these little nuts under here need to be tightened up to Triumph specifications, which will be 38 Newton meters. So I've set up my my torque wrench just here to 38 Newton meters, and I'm going to get these tightened up nice. I'll get them nipped up first. Make sure that washer's nicely seated in that recess. Great stuff. Okay, now I've got the seat fitted onto the CoC Customs seat rail. They are asking me to cover this part of the front here with some masking tape, so when you're positioning it, you don't get it all scratched up and stuff, because it's a nice bit of kit. So I'm going to be a good boy and get on with that right now. I want to keep the sides free because they need to slide back into the frame, so I'm going to do this in a bit more detail off camera, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, now we've got the seat sitted onto the new CoC Customs rail. We have got this little device, which is where the spring connects into and sits on the top there. And this will sit on top of our shock that we've got fitted. Now, I didn't upgrade the shock to the Fox shock when I spec'd the bike because people said it wasn't worth it and it was rubbish anyway. So you're better off just with the stock shock. So I did just that. So you have this kit will actually work with the stock shock and a Fox shock, but there's a separate kit available on the website if you've got a different shock like an Öhlins or something like that. But I've got the stock shock. It does say give it a good old clean on the top so you've got no grit underneath there, because there's a little self-adhesive pad underneath here which you'll need to stick onto the shock, so you want it to be nice and clean. Also, you'll notice there is like a lip section on the bottom just here. This lip section basically goes to the rearwards most part of the bike, because there's a little ridge on your shock, and that will allow it to sit nice and flush and nice and level, because you're going to want it to be straight. Right, I am going to stick this on so it's nice and level, and then you get in the kit this pre-shaped sort of Jubilee clip, which is just fantastic. The amount of thought that's gone into this is fantastic. I doubt this is an off-the-shelf piece of kit, so fair play to CoC for coming up with something like this, because it's mad. Excellent quality. Anyway, shut up waffling. I'm going to go ahead and get this stuck on the bike and yeah, make sure it's nice and straight. Okay, so I've just stuck that on there. I thought the camera was recording, but it turns out it wasn't. So basically what I was saying is the width of this is just a tiny bit wider than the gap basically that you've got to slide the seat slider back into later. So you can't really mess it up too badly, because as long as you line up the edges and it's pretty straight, all good. The manual does mention that on your shock, you should basically give it a good old clean just beforehand. Mine's basically a brand new bike, so I've given it a quick whiz over with a cloth, but yeah, it's all nice and clean anyway. This kit is specific to the original equipment shock and a Fox shock, which is a factory or a dealer fit upgrade on these bikes. A lot of people said before I bought it, don't bother with the Fox shock because it's rubbish anyway, and you're much better off with this and then getting one of these kits. So that's exactly what I've done. I've stuck that on there, it's nice and straight. Next up, I've got this Jubilee clip, which came with the kit. It's fantastic quality, how it's pre-made exactly to the shape required for this. Excellent, excellent bit of thought has gone into this. This is going to be quite fiddly, I think, to get this under there, so you can watch me struggle and swear for a bit while I bung this on. Well, that was actually easier than I anticipated. It does say in the manual that it's easiest if you can get this little bit with the 8mm socket tightener, fastener at the top of the bracket. It's easier to get going on the thread there than it is down the side. So I'm going to do that, twist it round so it's in the right position and get that all tightened up nice. If I didn't just mention it, this is an 8mm socket. So let's get that in there. Oh, okay, that goes in well easy. Right, so now I've got that started. I'm going to twist this up so it's all now flush. As you can see, it's all flash. You probably can't see. I'll lift the camera up. Okay, when you first start tightening up this 8mm socket, you'll have this on the top, on the flat section just here. Once it's got a bit of thread in there and it's is enough to hold itself in place, just twist this round and you'll notice that this little bit of strap fits nicely in a recess in this spring mount just here. So now that's all nice and straight, I am going to get that all nice and tightened up with an 8mm socket. Okay, once it goes in a certain amount, I'm going to start scratching my frame with this knurled part of my socket set here. So you can actually use a flathead screwdriver to finish it off. It's a bit thinner than this shaft, so I'm going to go ahead and finish it off with a flathead screwdriver. That is not going anywhere. Okay, now when you get the kit, in actual fact, when you buy the kit, you have to specify how heavy you are. Now, because there's different spring rates available for this kit, I'm basically right at the top end of the weight for this thing. Not at the top, but close to it. But the good news is I am losing weight. So you have to specify what it is. In any eventuality, it comes with all loads of different springs anyway. This is the main spring, so that goes on no matter what weight you're using. Okay, I'm going to put that somewhere safe so I don't drop it on my bike. Okay, so you've got, for different weights, if you're more lightweight, then you'll just have the main spring, and you've got different bump stops here. This one's got F machined into it, and this one's got R machined into it. Basically, the how you specified for the seat to be at the front of the rail, like I have, or the rear, will depend which bump stop you've got, because I noticed they're very slightly different in length there. So the tolerances, I guess, are... Don't know what I'm talking about, but there's a reason one's shorter than the other. So I won't be using one of those because I'm at the top of the weight. We've got some smaller bump stops just here. Again, F and R for front and rear, but 3 different springs here, and they've got different numbers on, 1, 2 and 3. I'm guessing these are for sort of, so you can play around with the different spring rates depending on how heavy you are. They recommend that you start with 1, but because I'm right towards the top of the weight thing, I'm going to bang on a 3, because I'm guessing, it doesn't say anywhere, but I'm guessing 3 is the stiffest of those springs. I'll see if I can test off camera just with my hand and see if I can notice any difference, but I'm going to go for the number 3 and the F bump stop because my seat is at the front of the rail. Okay, so I've had a little look at those 3 different springs, and I do think that there is more stiffness in this one at number 3 than there is in number 2, and particularly in the number 1, which would make sense, but I might be imagining it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bang on the main spring and the spring number 3 because of my weight, and also the bump stop with F machined into the end of it because my seat's at the front. So let's get on with that, shall we? Make sure that's all nice and sort of square, I suppose. I know it's not square, but make sure it's all square and sitting in there nicely. Now I need to grab the seat, so we're going to bung that back on there. Okay, I've got the seat back now, and you can see I've put the masking tape just on the front there. That's because when we're lowering it down into there, it might scuff a little bit on the frame, which would obviously scratch the nice billet or CNC'd piece of metal here, which we don't want, and we can whip that off in a second once it's all fitted. So according to the instructions, what we need to do is lower the back of the seat, slide that onto the spring, and then tilt it forwards, and you will be able to line up the holes. And their tip is to bung a suitably sized screwdriver through the hole, which you'd normally put your bolts in, so you can sort of give it a dry run. So that's exactly what I've done. And it is now on there, and you can already see it's got a bit of spring in there. So CoC's recommendation is basically that you get the bike flat on the floor, have a little sit on it and have a see how that feels. I'm not going to bother doing that because I'm right at the top of the weight chart for this. I'm pretty confident it will be okay like this with the hardest setup. So I'm just going to get on and nip these bolts back in and get the seat put on proper. Okay, now we're ready to fit the bolts back into the frame and get the seat put back on properly. There are 2 different instructions for these bolts. Previously, well, according to Triumph, these need to be torqued up to 48 Newton meters. It says in the booklet to do something else, so I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. But this side on the right-hand side goes in dry without a washer. In the kit, they supply a washer for the left-hand side, which is not an OEM piece of equipment. That comes actually with this kit. So on the right-hand side, this is going to go in dry with no thread lock, no washer, and this needs to be tightened up. That's all it says in the manual. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, I'm not actually going to fully tighten that one until I've got the other side lined up, because I wanted to make sure it's fully straight before I tighten that one fully. I'm going to get the other one in the thread, but I need to do something else to that bolt, so I'm going to show you what we're doing there first. Okay, since the new seat with the spring kit on is now being asked to pivot in the frame, which it wasn't doing previously, we have to do things slightly different with the bolt that which we took out earlier, but only on the left-hand side. This will need to have a washer, some grease, since it will be pivoting, and also some thread lock, so it doesn't come out. And I'll tell you why there's thread lock in just a second. So I'm going to go and bang that on as prescribed in the instructions, which is as follows. Nice bit of grease on the top part of the shaft. That will be the bit there without a thread on it. Give it loads on there. You can always wipe it off afterwards. Job's a good one. Right, I don't want that to get on my bike, so that's going on the floor. Okay, next up, we've got a washer. I don't want to get grease all over me, but the washer is going to go on next. All good. And last but not least, in the package from CoC Customs, you get this thread lock. It's called medium hold. They're asking you to bung a little bit of that on the end of the thread, because the thread, the bolt threads directly into the new slider from CoC Customs. So I'm going to bung that on there, and that will just make sure it doesn't come undone. I'll do that off camera because I need both hands really. In fact, I'll do it on camera because I've got this handy little device called a socket set, which I can use to hold onto the screw better while I bung this on the end. I don't know how much I'm going to be putting on, but I need it to cover a few of these threads there. And as that goes into the frame, that will get worked around anyway, but I'm going to give it a little bit of a helping hand around the thread there. It's better to have too much than too little, I guess. Smells nice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this bolt in now. You see it's got a nice bit of thread lock on there, also a bit of grease and the washer, and that's going to go back in this hole. And I didn't want to tighten the other side fully so that I can move the seat around a little bit to get this nice and lined up, so this goes in nice and straight. Easier. So I'm going to bung that in there now and hope I don't lose any of it inside my bike frame. Okay, that seems to have caught a thread already. Do it up nice and easy. Okay, now that bolt is almost in, I'm going to come back to the other side and make sure this side is nice and tightened up. This one needs to be done up nice and tight and secure, and then we'll sort out the other side and get it finished. Okay, so the reason we've got the Loctite on this side is because this is not being done up tight as it was previously with the original Triumph slider. This needs to have some pivot movement allowable in it, so that is not going to be done up as tight, and that is what the thread lock is on there for. Because I'm not doing it up so tight, it will stop the bolt coming out when you don't want it to, and the washer and the grease will allow it to have a little bit of movement in the seat, which is required for it to have the spring. So I'm going to get ahead and do this up now. It says to do it up just tight enough so that it's tight but still allows movement in the seat. So let's do it. I reckon that's good enough. So as you can see, the seat is now on nice and secure. That's not going anywhere. I was a little bit concerned when I first placed the bolt in there, I was able to lift the seat up a little bit, but because that was just because the bolt wasn't tightened up, so it allowed a little bit of upwards movement. But now I've tightened the bolt up, no such issue, and it is solid as a rock. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this masking tape. Hopefully it's not scratched, doesn't look like it. Easier said than done. Okay, so I'm not going to lie, getting that last bit of masking tape off of there was a bit of a ball ache. So that is all done now. The last thing to do, just need to secure this tank up again with the two 12mm bolts. So I'm going to crack on and do that, and then we'll have a little sit on it and see what it feels like. Right, let's get these bolts put back in here. I did mention in my previous video about adjusting the seat height on the bobber that when you undo these bolts just here, the tank will have a tendency to slide in towards the front of the bike a little bit. So don't be afraid to manhandle it a bit and push it back so you can get a nice lined up hole there to bung the bolt back in. Careful not to drop the bolt into the inner workings of the bike. Lovely. I'll get the other side located and then nip those up. Solid as a rock. Right, let's get this puppy back on the ground. This ATV lift is a fantastic bit of kit. Let's whip this out and stand the bike on its stand. Okay, let's swing a leg over and see what it's like. Okay, going to bounce up and down a little bit. Hopefully you can see the seat moving up and down a bit as well. Stop looking at my arse. Excellent. If I lean back and have a good look, it looks like I can see the shock moving and also the seat. And if I feel through actually to where the spring is, I can definitely feel it going up and down on the spring. So I reckon that is doing its job admirably. And even if I bounce on it, not hitting the bump stop, which is excellent news. Good, good. Well, there you go. This is now fitted. I reckon you could probably do that in about 20 minutes if you weren't shooting a video at the same time. But I have to say, I've been very impressed with the quality of the kit. The main slider rail is a piece of art, that is, to be honest. It's a shame it's so hidden, but initial impressions are very good. There will be a full review coming up once I've had a chance to road test it and use it for a little bit. But for now, very pleased with the results. Anyway, if you found this useful or helpful in any way, don't forget to hit subscribe. There's a little button in the corner just there, and it really helps my channel out, as does give me a thumbs up if you can, please. Really appreciate that. But if you haven't already, do subscribe. I just said that tonight. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Have you tried this CoC custom seat? And, you know, let me know in the comments what you think about it, or are you planning to do it? Anyway, thanks for watching. Until next time.
Catch you later.